I'm Zoe, and this is The Root Causes with David Russell Williams. Williams' life. Williams immigrated from Bromsgrove, Worcestershire, England. He went to one of the finest schools in Canada. He graduated with a degree in politics and economics from the University of Toronto. At the age 23, he went to basic training to become a pilot in the Canadian Air Forces. At 28, he was married, and he excelled and was eventually promoted to Lieutenant Colonel of CVF Trenton in 2009.
He was a killer with the ultimate cover. As a base commander in the Canadian Air Force, Colonel Russell Williams comforted families of the fallen, rubbed shoulders with the Prime Minister, and even flew planes for the Queen. But no one, including his wife, knew that he was also a sexual deviant, burglar, rapist, and murderer. And today, what began as fetish and fantasy led to a life sentence of solitary misery. For more than 20 years, he was a model airman and husband, described as a bright, shining star of the Canadian Air Force. Tonight, he is the most notorious pervert, rapist, and serial killer in recent Canadian history. After 4 days of stomach-churning evidence led to a life sentence, a nation wonders how this married colonel could have led such a deplorable double life.
How could anybody do such a horrible, horrible thing?
Over his flawless career, Russell Williams rose from decorated pilot to commander of support missions in Afghanistan and became the man in charge of Canada's largest and busiest airbase. But through those years of overachievement, there were urges. And 5 years ago, at age 42, he began acting on his fetish for women's underclothes by breaking into homes of strangers and acquaintances alike to dress up, masturbate, and steal samples for his personal collection.
You ever been interviewed by the police in a room like this before? Or?
Never.
Oh, no? Okay.
More than 80 of his home invasions went unsolved until 27-year-old Jessica Lloyd disappeared in January. Detectives found distinctive tire and boot tracks near her home. And a week later, a sharp-eyed officer noticed the suspicious tread matched the tires on Williams' SUV.
This is a photocopy of the boot that you took off your foot.
Yeah.
Just a little while ago. Okay.
When his boots matched as well, detectives were certain they had their man.
We need to have some honesty, okay? Because this is getting out of control really fast. So.
Williams was convicted of 88 counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of sexual assault, and 2 counts of forcible confinement, and 82 breaking and entering charges dating back to 2007. Williams begins his criminal path in the year 2007. He would break into women's homes and steal different articles of clothing, bras, underwear, sleepwear, bathing suits, etc. He would proceed to take photos of him wearing the women's clothing, and he would continue to do this for up to 2 years before he would take it a little bit further. These are some of the pictures of him in the clothing and an example of how particular he was with organizing the clothing that he stole. His sexual assaults. His first offense was a woman in her 20s who had a kid and her boyfriend was out of town. He entered the home through a window and proceeded to hold her down, assault her, and take pictures of her. This assault went on for over 3 hours. The second offense was 13 days later and about the same as the first. He targeted a woman who was home alone and submitted her into doing the same thing. This assault also went on for about 3 hours. They were both sexual assaults, but William never penetrated the women, only forced them to take photos. His murders. Corporal Marie France Commune, 38, and Jessica Lloyd. Corporal Marie Williams knew her from his base and knew her work schedule because he worked with her. And on November 25th, 2009, she was found dead in her home, and police later found through photo evidence taken by Williams himself that the assault lasted for over 5 hours and he ended up killing her. The second woman was Jessica Lloyd. He stalked this woman until he felt it was the right time. He knew her schedule and knew when she would be home. He waited for her to get home. And then he spent over a day making this woman do many different things. He held multiple picture sessions which lasted over 3 hours each, and he eventually ended up killing her. Both of the women died of suffocation. His social and environmental causes were his military subculture. The military subculture is known for being rough, tough, having persistence and power. He displayed this rough and tough image only to those he was assaulting, tying them up, making them pose for pictures, and eventually forcing them to have sex with him before killing them. He made it known he was powerful and that he had control over them. He felt that he had this power over these women and that since he hasn't been caught yet, what could one more hurt? Williams was at such a high rank and held a lot of power, and it was getting to his head. He was confident and had an ego to match. He thought he was going to be able to outsmart the police by appearing to not know anything and staying confident. Williams was persistent. He was persistent with the way most of his burglaries and assaults took place. Williams documented every piece of clothing he had taken, pictures of himself in the same clothes, and even took pictures of objects in these homes relating to the women he burglarized, like their phones or their IDs or their purses or things like that. In his psychological causes, he dealt with paraphilia, a disorder that involves intense sexual arousing fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors along with at least one of the following: non-human objects, the suffering or humiliation of oneself or one's partner, or children and other non-consenting persons that occur over a period of at least 6 months. Background on paraphilia. Paraphilia tends to be more common in sexual offenders that commit homicide than those who don't. Paraphilic behaviors are enacted through a cyclical reinforcing process which consists of a relationship between the paraphilic stimuli, fantasy, and orgasm, often enhanced through facilitators such as drugs or pornography. A repetition of this kind of stimulus will eventually make a person become desensitized to their actions and make them progress further down the chain, like Williams did. Progressively violent behaviors that develop from the paraphilia can manifest in criminal activity, including burglary, assault, rape, and murder, even developing into sadistic sexual activity involving torture and mutilation. All of these things William has done. Williams and paraphilia. In 2007 and 2008, he would burglarize over 80 different homes of women and get off by only stealing their underwear and taking photos of himself in them. When this became less exciting for them, he had to turn it up a notch. On 2009 and 2010, he would assault his first victim, forcing her to let him take photos of her, and 13 days later would do it again. He would then graduate from sexual assault to murder of 2 women. Only he knew from working with her and one he had just seen vulnerable. Williams had eventually got tired of just stealing and taking his photos. His urge to satisfy his needs eventually took over and turning him into a cold-blooded killer. Williams was charged with 88 counts dating back to 2007. Everyone that knew Williams knew him as smart, skilled, super, and hardworking. No one would have ever seen this coming, and still some don't understand how a man who had everything on his side could do something like this. Williams is now spending life in prison in Ontario, Canada. Thank you.